Depends on how
March
cooperative you are
19th.
with TSA.
Are we ready?
Yep.
Plugged in?
Yep,
Turned
plugged
on?
in.
Video on? Sound on?
Sound's going.
Yep.
Need one of those directors?
Go ahead, I'm sound is now.
Go. All right. Danny,
Yes.
let's call this meeting to order.
Keisha Donner,
Here.
Mark Ramey,
Here?
Steve McCombs.
Here,
All right, this is a special meeting of the Marion County Board of Supervisors. Is there a motion to approve this morning's agenda?
Make motion to approve today's agenda.
second,
McCombs,
aye.
Ramey,
Aye.
Donner.
Aye.
Very good. On to business. The point of our meeting today is to begin discussion on the VA campus demolition project. Today is approval and release of bid documents. We'll do a review, and we have some guests here. So maybe for the sake of good order, let's identify yourselves for the record, please.
My name is Dana Peterson. I'm an architect with Ethos Design Group.
Very good. And then we have another person coming. We'll let him do that. And then we have Chris Nestby, Facilities Director for Marion County here. We've got a few other audience members as well, so that's good. Danny Graves from the Auditor's Office and the board. I don't know if there's something you want to start off with and maybe kind of give us an overview of what we've got in front of us. Now, Steve's read all of it front to cover with tabs, so he could do that for us, but I'll let you go ahead and give us kind of the overview.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me. When Brad comes, he'll also assist with some discussion and overview of the site work. But at a bigger picture, obviously you guys know you have that campus over there, the VA campus, and you chose to reach out to us to help you develop the bid documents necessary to receive bids for the demolition of the existing structures on the campus. So that includes all of the structures with the exception of a few. The building, I know them by number, but building 163. If we're sharing the screen, can we flip to
Yes.
one of the sheets?
Absolutely.
It's about halfway through. I don't know who has control. Oh, it doesn't? Okay, I'll just continue.
What page are you?
I'm on AD001. It's a colored site plan of the buildings, and it's about halfway through the set.
Oh, AD, yep.
Your version is smaller, by the way.
Your version.
I just downloaded the link.
No problem.
I could log in and we can pull it up on.
I just saw the first page and thought maybe we had it all and we could flip to it, but that's not a problem
Yeah, I
at
need
all.
my magnifier.
Yeah.
You say
It's
AD
color
or
coded.
AD?
So it helps.
AD1.
AD0001.
It's after all the seat sheets.
It's the overall view.
Yes, it is.
Towards the back.
And it's just a
I'm
quick,
at 103.
a quick colored plan that makes it easy to kind of see what's staying and what's going. So the existing buildings on campus, there's approximately 60 structures and buildings total. So that includes the shelters, the enclosed walkways, everything. If the generator buildings, there's a lot of miscellaneous structures on site also. So you can see them all on this sheet, and the buildings in green are the buildings that will be demolished and removed from the site by the contractor. The buildings in red are the existing buildings to remain. So
maybe, good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Sorry, I'm late.
No worries.
Was it
No
60 or
worries.
65 total?
So maybe,
66 structures.
Chris, just for the
Thank you.
sake of kind of the colloquial definition of these buildings, we've got them numbered as 163, 77, 75, and 173. But what do we know those buildings
The
as?
laundry facility,
Okay.
the boiler plant, and the education center is
Education.
actually, we listed that as a potential bid alternate. If we can find a way for that newer building, it was built roughly the same time as the laundry facility was. You've all been through it. It's in fairly good shape. If we can find a way to repurpose that in future development, we're gonna leave that one undemolished as well.
Okay.
But those are the only three structures, so laundry, boiler plant, because both of those fit in with the Confluence master plan.
Mhm.
And then as an alternate, save the education center if we can fit that in also.
And the water tower.
And the water tower, yes,
And
the
the
water
water
tower,
tower.
we lump into that whole industrial area in the back is staying as well.
Very good, very good, thank you, please.
So aside from the buildings, which is, what you see on the site, we obviously have a large amount of roadway and pavement that needs to be removed. Trees on site, a majority of them, I would say, have to be removed just because of their adjacency to the structures and the utilities and things like that. There are some pockets where we're trying to save them because they fit in with sort of future development needs. And then what you don't see is the underground tunnelways. There's tunnels, quite a bit of tunnels underneath the surface there that have utilities running through them. And then in addition, just the utilities that serve the campus underground. So we really do have to do quite a bit of work, even underground, to take everything out in order to get it ready for development in the future. Can't really build on top or expect a developer to build on top of something if it's not a clean site ready to go.
So let me, and board, feel free to, you make this kind of a free-flowing dialogue if you don't mind. I don't want to take you off track too much from what
Go
you got
ahead.
going on with Chris. Because it is a public meeting, we want to make sure the public understands fully what the scope is of this. So what we're saying is when we do the demo, we're talking about taking everything out above ground and below ground,
Correct.
correct?
Yes.
And we've accounted for all of this through some different means with Garden Associates, with some other entities, correct?
Correct.
Okay, very good, please.
The next page is sort of the list and description version of the first graphic page. So that just really explains for the contractors, this is what each of the buildings are. It's a huge campus, so even just as a design team, this was a really good way to organize the information on these are the structures that exist, this is the approximate heights and sizes of those structures and materials of those structures. Ultimately, since it's complete demolition, we don't have to get into the level of detailed drawings of each building that we would need to for selective demolition projects or new construction projects. So
Other than the alternates on there's some on like 73, I think.
that's correct. Yep, there are two buildings where we've included more detail architecturally. The enclosed walkways connect to building 173, and the enclosed walkways are going away entirely. So we kind of had to explain to the contractor, this is the line where it goes away completely. Building 173 is an alternate, but in the base bid, it would be an existing building to remain. So we wanted to show them that condition of what we expect that building to look like when
Which
it's
in the bid
separated.
process, they will bid it both ways.
That is correct.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you're familiar with alternates, but just for the whole group, alternates are numbers we're going to get on bid day. So the base bid is kind of our minimum expectations for all of the contractors. And then we have one add alternate, which means that, for an additional amount of money, we're going to ask for the cost to demolish this building 173 so that you can see that number competitively bid up front day one and then make the decision on that day. Or just have that number in the back of your mind for maybe future planning or whatever the needs might be for that building. The second alternate that we have is for it's a deduct alternate, which we don't frequently do, but it was appropriate for this project. And there was some desire by the Public Works group to have some of the existing concrete be crushed and remain on site for future projects for the county. So the cost savings for the contractor to not have to haul that off site and dispose of that themselves is the number that we're asking for.
So Chris, for that, when we talked about that in previous meetings, what are we looking at from, have we done a cost estimate on what that might save the county?
I have not personally. I know Tyler looked into it, gave me a base number of tonnage that he'd like to retain. Part of that base bid is hauling that off to a couple different county locations of their storage locations. The rest of it that they don't want, we would like to keep in talking with Brad and Dana both as we think about future development, road base, things of that nature. We do want to pile some of that crushed concrete there to rebase new roads going in. So it's just going to save us money long term of having to find new base, bring it back onto campus. I don't know, we've never really talked about overall savings. We just knew from the standpoint it would be savings keeping it there. So we didn't run any hard numbers on it.
Yeah.
6,000 tons is where we ended up, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, you know, if you look at, say, $30 a ton, that'd be $180,000. Between
Okay.
150 and 200,000.
Okay,
So around that.
thereabout.
But we would have to, if we're going to store it on site, we would have to look at an area that we would not be borrowing from for fill for the contractor, correct?
Correct,
Correct.
and really the fill is all concentrated in one. There was one spot on the campus that had 3 different locations of proper fill dirt on it, enough to do the job that Garden had identified, for the team services report.
And that's
technical report.
That's identified in this report back
It's on the
here.
west side of the campus, on that west 40 is actually where the fill dirt will come from. So really, if we just don't pile it there, we're pretty safe. My initial thoughts were, to try to keep things close and keep things timely, somewhere off to a little bit west of the north buildings we're retaining, i.e. like the boiler plant, laundry facility, we'd probably pile there. And then you could pull off that to redo road base and things of that nature. And that's, I mean, a location is something we can identify at any time, but that was just my thought of where we'd have that stuff crushed and
But
piled.
we have given thought to it. I mean, that's
Yes,
important.
I think there's about
Yes.
30,000 ton of concrete crushed when it's all said and
Total
done.
material, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of asphalt overlay and stuff, so
Yep.
some of it's gonna be more accessible for crushing than
Yep.
others. But that's kind of the quantity that Tyler Christian landed on, 6,000 tons, so that's.
Is what he wanted, yep.
Yeah.
Just,
So from, I'm sorry, Steve, go ahead.
well, just so I'm clear on it, in the bid process, and I thought I'd seen that in there, the contractor, will they be crushing this, or do we have to find somebody to crush this material?
They will be crushing it.
So that's in the bid contract, correct?
Correct.
It's
Okay,
an alternate.
okay.
As an
Is that
alternate.
good?
That's an
That,
alternate.
yes, as
Okay.
that alternate.
Okay,
All right,
Right.
Steve?
Crushing,
Very
if
good.
they
Yeah.
choose, and disposal of anything else is also the contractor's responsibility.
yeah,
The alternate's just associated with the stuff that the county may want to keep.
okay.
So again, I want to make sure that we, at a high level, put this into compartments for people to be able to process this big project. We're asking the taxpayers to, expend a lot of taxpayer dollars to do this. So to the extent possible, we are going to reuse as much material out of the demolition for fill, construction, road base as we can. Fair statement,
That's a fair statement, yeah.
okay? Any other places we need to get fill dirt from, probably west on VA property, we bring back over, saving us significant amount of money, not having to truck in, not having to
Yes.
truck in fill dirt. So we can keep everything pretty much contained on the campus as far as materials needed to backfill, et cetera. Is that a fair?
I think keeping in mind where we're going to borrow for fill is a twofold process, because we're looking at maybe developing in that area that we're taking the fill out of into some, maybe a park area or something.
Yeah.
So it works, so it's helping us in that aspect plus the fill.
Right, okay.
If you look at, do they have full plan sets or not?
Not
Yes,
yet.
they,
Okay,
We just gave them the go-ahead to develop off the recommendations on Monday.
okay.
And that's what I'd like to bring up too, is just for a public record, is that in working with Confluence in the city of Knoxville on a site plan, it's all fitting into this demolition process, so
Yeah, and that's
I
great,
mean-
Steve, that's a great point. Plan number 1 for Confluence is more than likely where Knoxville will land. We have made some minor alterations to that plan, nothing that materially changes what we presented. But the schools and the city, at our direction, wanted to make some adjustments. They did that. Does not change the tax base estimates for the development, which was excellent. And we wanted to make sure that Knoxville had a plan that fit with where they saw this going, with what they saw this as an additive to the community. So as long as everything fits within that design, that general design. We know there's gonna be changes
Yeah.
as a contractor comes in, and we might say, oh, we want the road here instead of there, we want these houses here instead of there. We know that's gonna happen.
I think the
But
point I'm trying to make is that we've got everybody involved in this.
Yeah.
It's not just a decision being made by the three people here. It's everybody is involved in this decision.
Absolutely, yeah.
I have a question though.
Yeah.
I understand why, Dana, why the roads can't be there, but can you tell the public why we have to demolish the roads that are currently in there?
Yeah, Brad, do you wanna?
Yeah, I mean,
that?
I think the existing roads, it's a combination of condition and, you know, width and arrangement. It was a self-enclosed facility basically, so they're not, the streets, the roadways, driveways aren't built up to
There's no continuity.
public
There's no continuity to them.
improvement standards, yes, yeah. So it would be a community, kind of within a community, built to different standards if you use the existing road layouts, pavements.
And there
that are
would be
there right
maintenance
now.
and improvements.
Right. And
Just to get them to a usable level moving forward anyways.
And also the heavy equipment that's gonna be on them is going to
Yes.
deteriorate them
you'll
too.
probably finish what's.
Yes, okay.
They're not in very good shape and they'll be trashed after the demolition.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what
the
I-
tunnels, the
That is
utilities,
in a
everything that
nutshell.
runs under site is really going to tear up that site significantly during demolition.
I mean, as we have had comments from the community, and they're all valid comments and concerns about the trees and the landscape and really what it amounts to is the history of the VA campus. And we've told people repeatedly, I talked with Mike Roberts this week on an interview that we'll actually have to redo because of audio problems, but we are going to respect the history of the VA, respect what it meant to the town, what it meant to Marion County, but a demolition of this magnitude, it's going to change. Trees are going to be uprooted, roads are going to be torn up. We cannot be as precise as we would like to be. And maybe not, that's not even the right way to phrase it. We can't be so precise to let the perfect get in the way of the good. We need to demo the site to get it ready and modernize it. And I think that's the point you're making, is that the current structures, road base, et cetera, will not withstand what we were talking about from a modern transportation system. Modern residential housing, modern infrastructure won't do it.
And that's the other, from the utility standpoint, so, you know, the Knoxville Water Department has basically said they will take over the distribution system in there because of the age of it, condition of it, et cetera. So the water system has to be removed. The sanitary sewer system, most of that is vitrified clay pipe, yet it's clay tile sanitary sewer. That should come out as well if you're developing. And the storm sewer, likewise, most of that's clay and undersized. So by the time you rip out all those utilities,
Yep.
there's not much left in the way of roadways or pavement out there.
Right.
So,
Right. Very
Thank
good.
you.
Very good, thank you. Good question. Please.
if I can touch on the borrow just a minute. So we have identified, based on the soil borings and location, how it fits into the plan on the, I'll call it the west 40 around the pond over there. The borrow is gonna substantially come from along 118th on the east and McGregor on the north, kind of the northwest and northeast corners of that 40 section. The idea is basically to make an availability of walkout single-family residential lots off of those two roadways. So,
Yeah. I mean, there's a purpose,
yeah.
which is good.
Yep, and it's on site, so they, I mean, they've got a little bit of a trucking distance to get it over to the holes they're gonna have to fill in, but it's at least, you know, it's on site, they don't have to get out on the roadways other than crossing to. So,
I've been in the business long enough, if I can see where I'm hauling it, that's saving
it's
me
not too
money.
bad.
Yes.
And from the tree standpoint, we have, you'll see in the plans, so we've clouded the areas where the proposed parks and so are to be in the future development, and identified those for selected removal, you know, for the county's discretion. I think, Chris, you're talking about getting an arborist in this spring to analyze some of those areas a little bit more.
And we're gonna analyze just the identified park areas once the confluence plan is set in place, which should be hopefully very soon here prior to demolition. And then we're just gonna do a basic assessment of whether or not those trees can be saved, and if they can't, we're gonna treat it like everything else, save the ones we can. Especially identified park areas where we know there isn't gonna be development, only if we can get utilities out from around those trees, tunnels out from around those trees, roads out, without destroying the trees in the process. At the end of the day, we have to make sure this is development ready, and that might mean potentially most of the trees disappear.
Right.
And that is something we just have to accept.
Right, absolutely. So, Chris, we've accounted for the cemetery in the bid. How have we done that? How have we accounted for that?
So it's been identified on there, you know, of course, to protect it and not disturb it. It's also been identified to leave that driveway from 18th to the cemetery entrance at the end of construction. So there will be access from the public roadway to the cemetery right in place.
And it'll be no different than it is now. So currently, since we've fenced off the entire property, I've been contacted one time in the last year for someone to go out and visit the cemetery. So it'll be the same process. They'll get a hold of the facilities department. One of the three of us will go over there and make sure they have access to it, escort them if need be, according to demo contractors on how they feel about people being on campus. If we have to escort them back there, we're more than happy to do that. But people will still have access to that cemetery if they need it.
After the demolition though, it'll just be a public access off of 118th.
We're gonna leave the fence up until, we're even gonna consider leaving the fence up for construction and of the actual subdivision as well.
Oh, and development
So
process?
we're right now planning on it, and in the bid documents, you'll see that the fence stays. The fence does not come down. So from a security perspective, making sure people aren't wandering onto a demolition site, number one, is extremely important to the contractor and to us from a liability perspective. But number two, also, as you think about going forward and developing, you're still gonna have a lot of equipment out there putting infrastructure in. You're gonna have contractors, job trailers, all sorts of things out there, that extra layer of security until at some point during development, that fence is going to stay.
I don't see a problem with it, as long as people have a reasonable access when they request it. I don't see why there would be any concern.
We've also included a plan for removal of debris, correct? And not necessarily contained within the bid documents per se, but we've thought through that process as well, correct? Where are we at with that?
All of the debris is slated to be removed.
Yes,
from the
nothing's
site.
staying on campus but some of the crushed rock for road base.
But how will it be? Because there's there's road impacts.
Yes.
Obviously, there's gonna be impact. This
Yeah,
is a lot.
That's been addressed.
So yeah, we've had a conversation with the city.
There'll be haul routes.
Yeah, we're establishing haul routes. We've talked about, you know, timing that they're gonna be allowed. We've covered all the basis of, noise nuisance and what times they're gonna be able to allow or be allowed to make that noise. There's a few specific dates that we carved out where there won't be loud nuisance construction going on. There'll be road routes, and we're still working through the exact route they're going to take, but that conversation has already taken place with the city. Once we finally have, due to a lot of hard work from Impact 7G and these folks, we know the level of hazardous material and asbestos on site. So now I'm gonna go talk to the landfill, so they have a rough idea. I'm gonna give them copies of it. They're gonna know how much potential material is gonna be heading their way as well. So we've addressed almost every contingency possible that we can think of.
Technically,
Early on.
in the bid documents, that's the general contractor's job to do that, but
It is.
but you're doing
But
that ahead of time.
Because it's a county establishment, I
Right.
wanna make sure there's no surprises.
And I agree with that. I just wanted to point out that basically.
Yep,
that
it
was
is
the general
technically theirs,
contractor's
but like
responsibility.
everything else, we've kind of went above
Yeah.
and beyond to make sure that the best bid possible comes to the taxpayers of Marion County. That's the reason for all the extra steps that we took. In most cases, none of these steps are taken other than some bid documents put together. Rarely is there asbestos testing and hazardous material testing. Rarely is there geotechnical studies done. Rarely is, you know, a firm like Garden Associates talking about where we're gonna get filled from. That's always, you know, just kind of padded in most cases.
Well, you raise a great point, Chris and Steve, as you were talking, and I want to make sure the public is aware of this. Unlike a lot of projects in the past where you hire a general contractor or an engineering firm and you kind of just turn it all over to them, that's not happening here. I mean, we are going to turn the project over to them, but we've outlined how we want it done, and we will stay engaged through this entire process. to ensure it's completed the way that we have conceptualized this from a board, city of Knoxville perspective, things that Chris has worked on. So we will stay actively engaged throughout this entire process. We're not just turning something over to a GC saying, have at it, and we'll catch up with you in 10 months. So it's gonna be it'll be a very active process, I envision. Anything else in here you wanna cover right now?
Anything else on site?
I think I heard mention the stockpile. So Chris, right now we have the stockpile location tentatively located on the southeast corner of, I call it the middle 40.
Oh, okay.
Not that can't change, but thought
No, makes
if all
perfect
the
sense.
roadways disappear within the campus for the county and so too to get access to the material, we thought the closer to Pleasant. And there's a relatively level area there that seemed to be out of the way.
Did you say southeast corner, Brad? So about where those sheds are at now,
Right.
south of the
Yeah,
bunker?
I think there was a former building or lot there maybe too. There's a relatively level area in the southeast corner of that middle. If you look up there, so that the western paved roadway within the current campus, it'd be just on the west side of that.
So basically northwest of Willits, where the Willits
Yeah.
West Pleasant intersection. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
That's where it's currently identified.
Just so we don't have to move it twice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once is enough.
Yeah, once is enough.
And as far as removals go, so when you look at the plans, when you do, they'll be, from our standpoint, we've got it broken down into panels across the campus. And each one will have a sheet number and then, for example, C101, C101A, C101B. C101 will have brought out to the forefront all the buildings and pavements and vegetation. C101A will have all the utilities brought to the forefront, there's a labyrinth of utilities out there, and tunnels and all that sort of thing. And then if you look at B, like 101B, that shows what it's gonna look like after everything that's to be removed has been removed. So that's kind of what you wanna look at to see what it's gonna look like once the demo has been done and restoration.
Yeah, there's three different views on, there's the initial view of what the buildings are and what's gonna be demoed. Then it shows the utilities part,
Yeah.
and then it shows the demolition, what it looks like after
Post-demolition.
I noticed that.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and obviously the building, the laundry facility you mentioned up there, we are leaving a few things, a couple other small buildings there to the southwest, some pavement around there just until that site gets redeveloped to help with some of the drainage issues and so right around that building. The roof drains from that exit the building about 9 feet deep. So we have left, you'll see on those sheets, we've left that storm sewer from that building to the west. It goes all the way out to just to the east of the pond there on the west 40. That storm sewer needs to stay in place until there's another storm sewer to hook that building into. So when you look at what's gonna remain, you'll see that one pipe trailing across the site yet. And it's a fairly sizable pipe. I think it's 36 inches at the outlet. But that one really has to stay because otherwise there's nowhere to go with the roof water on it.
Turn it into a swamp, yeah.
And Chris and I have talked, when we've talked about too, when we get done, we're gonna remove all the roadways, driveways, all the current storm sewer system and so. So there's gonna be some compromised drainage across that. It's relatively flat across the main body of the campus. It kind of has a slope from the north to the south, a little bit towards the west in general. But, down your roadways, you've got this going on and intakes and so that aren't gonna be there anymore. So there will be, whether that's redevelopment of streets or whether that's, putting in, and that might be advisable, putting in some tiling, a couple runs of tiling through there to pick up low areas and stuff in the interim between demolition and redevelopment. But I want to make sure it stays in the forefront that there probably will be some water pockets out there when we get done demolition because that subsurface drainage system has gone away. So.
Okay. No, that's a good point. Thank you. All right, very good. Is there anything else you wanted to cover in here?
I don't have anything else on the drawings. I was gonna go over the schedule and process.
That's what I was
if
gonna
that's
ask you
okay?
next. That's okay, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So after today, pending approval, for proceeding. The documents will be issued to the plan room on Tuesday, and that gets published through master builders and all the required sites for advertising. And so that will be issued on the Tuesday, the 23rd, and then we have a pre-bid meeting on March 31st, which is mandatory just because that's not uncommon when you have existing buildings that you want them to come look at it. It's mandatory for the general contractor and the abatement contractor. Subcontractors can come as they choose. But we're really going to spend, an hour just answering questions, giving them an overview of the project, and then we've opened it up for like the afternoon for them to really just walk around and understand the existing facilities, because we feel that that is the best way to make sure that they are in tune with what's going on out there due to the size and scale that we're talking about. On April 15th, bids are due at 2 p.m. in this room, and we will open them publicly. Following that, we issue the apparent low bidder, and then we validate the bids as the design team, and then we come to the board on April 27th with recommendations to proceed. Whether that's low bidder or alternates or whatever that might be, that's the time where we would be able to have those follow-up discussions on decisions. You will have the time between the April 15th date and the 27th to, you'll have known your bids and evaluate also and kind of see what we're comfortable doing.
Sure.
Okay, this is where I'm gonna bring it up, Fred.
Go ahead.
The pre-bid meeting, March 31st.
Yes.
And going over the contracts, the general contractor has salvage rights.
That's correct.
So if there's anything in there that the county thinks that they want, will we have to get that out before March 31st, before they do the walkthrough, before they give
That
their
would be
bid?
ideal, yes.
So March 31st is that date.
Yes. We have had those discussions with Chris, and we have identified specific items in the documents that the contractor is required to salvage and give back to the owner.
I didn't see that part, I guess.
The thing on the top of my mind is the existing stained glass windows.
Yeah, I seen that.
Okay.
But there's other things out there that the county could probably
That is
use.
up to the discretion of the county and how they would want
My
to do that.
recommendation would be, Steve, if there's something that any department feels they need outside of the buildings that we're retaining control of, i.e. laundry, boiler plant.
Right.
Right.
Those are not being salvaged out,
Right.
they're not being demolished, the
Right.
contractor has no rights to anything in those buildings.
Correct.
But if there's something else on that campus that a department or another county facility thinks they can use, they need to get with me immediately.
Yes.
That's what I'm getting at. We need to get a hold of the department heads. Like I've seen, there's a 1,000-gallon LP tank out there that Tyler may be able to use out there. But it needs to be gone by March 31st before these bidders go out there
Yes.
and look around, because I had this discussion that they're gonna base their bids theoretically
They see also what
off
they can.
of salvage rights. And
And
I
that
don't believe
includes
that
two
for them.
things. That includes the construction documents and the site visit. So if there is anything that does come up between now and the 31st, and actually all the way until 4 days prior to bids being due, we can issue addendums
okay,
to the construction documents where we could clarify
so we have
if there are specific salvage rights that
And
the
that's what-
owner
that's what I
would
was
like
gonna
to
ask.
change.
we have a little
I'm glad-
cushion there.
That's true.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm glad you clarified that we have an opportunity between pre-bid and bid acceptance to make alterations.
Yes, and the line is 4 days prior to bid opening. We
Okay.
have to issue addendum no later than that in order to make sure the contractors have an opportunity to
So-
view the addendum.
So March 31st is the ideal date, but then
Yes,
without an addendum, it would be April 6th, is that what?
No,
that's a
15th.
Thursday, so I would say Monday of that week.
Monday of
Um,
the first week of April.
Yeah,
So
Right.
bids
Should
are
be
due
the
April
11th.
15th.
correct.
Bids are due April 15th. So 4 days prior to that, if I'm
Yes.
understanding properly, we would have to issue an addendum. Ideally, I would just, since other department heads are probably listening, if you have something that you think you want on that campus, I need to know by next week.
That would be
And
great,
we're just
because
gonna
we
call it good
do,
with that.
Yeah.
it would be better to have time to prepare the addendum, which we
Yeah.
would do regardless, because I wanna make sure that if there's something specific you're intending to salvage, that it is clearly documented in the construction documents.
Okay, that's my point. I just
Yeah.
wanna make sure
Got it.
everybody's clear on that. Okay.
Okay, so let's make sure we're clear, Steve, to your point, that if there's anything that the county can utilize, that we have to create an addendum for,
Yes,
you have to let Chris know by
The end of next week.
the end of next week, that
March
is,
26th.
by March 26th, at high noon.
High noon, I like it.
Mhm.
And if I hear anything past that, it's just,
We're done.
I think we just have to draw a line in the sand. and
Yeah,
that's
well,
the
yeah,
firm.
we do.
So
I don't know who's listening.
I'll send out an email as well.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get notification out to the county department.
I kinda like the March 30th, I mean, if it ain't out by March 31st, forget it.
Well, let's decide.
I know, that's what I'm
We
trying
can't
to
be floating around.
Well, I
mean,
think you gotta, what
Let's
day
go
is
with
the
what
third?
we just said.
The 20th.
Go with what we just said.
Yep.
That's it. No more addendums after that point. It is what it is, 'cause they have to know what they're bidding on,
Exactly.
correct.
right? Okay, so, wanna make sure I get, so pre-bid on the 31st,
Correct,
potentially some addendums, depending on what comes in
yes,
to Chris. On the 15th, the bids are due based on the bid package and any associated addendums. The 27th is when we award.
yes.
Okay,
We wouldn't necessarily have to have it out by that day. We could just identify it before demolition, correct?
For the
I would-
removal of anything,
Yeah.
I would say the more room we give people, Steve, the longer it's probably gonna sit.
Yeah.
Has been my experience with all humans. So why don't we say this, identify it by next week, by the end of next week on the 26th, and then you have 1 week to remove it.
Cause
And
we've
that
had the
way, 'cause
property.
what I
for
don't wanna
now.
do is get us into a
Long enough.
situation where we have demo contractors actually on site doing things, and now all of a sudden I've got other
Yeah.
county
Yeah,
departments
somebody
trying to
come
get
in
out there to
trying
get
to-
something.
Well,
I
no,
agree.
I get that and I agree with it. I
So,
agree.
all right. So manage that process.
I will send an email out today outlining that.
Perfect, all right. So on the 27th, you'll make recommendations to the board based on the bids that have been received,
correct,
and then we will make an award on that day
that is the plan.
when this thing moves.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The window that we've given, for construction is a start date of May 3rd. Intended to be as soon as possible after award, but there's always time for contracts and things like that, so.
Weather, et cetera.
Yeah, we like to be realistic, in that window, but ultimately the intent is that they're gonna get going right away, on the project. And then we've given them a little more than 12 months, so June 3rd is the substantial completion date.
Of 2022.
Correct.
Very good. So that would be, how many months are we talking about there? 18?
13.
13.
Yeah.
13. Excellent.
I see on the certification page, we didn't need a architectural certification.
We'll get that fixed.
Oh, okay,
It should have been there.
okay.
It's on the drawings. We'll get that added.
Good catch, Steve.
Maybe for the sake of the board, again, public meeting, what criteria are you, as the engineering firm, looking at when you review bids? What's the standard high-level list of things you review for the contractors? When I'm in the financial services world, so there are things I look at when I partner with a business in terms of financial capacity and the type of system they have, integration problems, all that type of stuff. What do you all look at?
So there's a few things that are standard in all publicly bid projects. So because it's public project, we have to accept bids, and then we have to have accept the low bid, the low responsible bid. So within that, one of the things that they're required to provide, that they would have to provide with any public project, is a 5% bid bond. So that's something that they, a company of a certain size wouldn't be able to get for a large project. if they were unable to complete that. Those bonding agencies have a lot of criteria also. The other thing that we've outlined in the specifications that would be typical of any project, but is a little larger for this project, is the insurance requirements. So there's, appropriately more significant insurance requirements for this project. So those are a couple things that are kind of a part of every public bid project, and it's just proportionally scaled for this project. In addition to that, we have chosen to include a pre-qualification form that is required to be completed by the general contractor and submitted to us by the 6th of April in order for us to review and just validate that they have experience with projects of a similar scale and can handle the magnitude of the project. So because it's a publicly bid project, it's not necessarily in your best interest to create hurdles that aren't appropriate. But getting a list of similar projects that they've completed is what we were after for this, and what we've outlined in the pre-qualification form. So
When you mention we have to accept the low responsible bid, I'm
Yes.
assuming that's open to interpretation.
a little bit, there is, it would have to be a pretty noticeable, they can't meet this criteria, they can't meet this criteria, or they have this kind of record.
Okay.
For the county to say that. And I think the criteria that we've established in the bid documents.
Because in my past experience, excuse me, Dan, I didn't mean
Go
to
ahead.
interrupt, but
No.
my past experience, I know that sometimes the low bid winds up being more expensive in the end.
I understand that. That unfortunately is a little bit a part of just the publicly bid process. You can't always
I know.
guarantee that. The things that the design team does to try to mitigate that kind of issue is just be as thorough and complete as we can in the construction documents, which is unique for this project.
And I believe you have been.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point, though, that I want to make sure everybody understands. It's that we're not accepting the lowest bid. We're accepting the lowest bid that can complete the project under the terms we have defined.
Correct.
Yes.
So that's pretty critical for
It
this
is.
project, because it precludes or excludes a lot of contractors who could not absorb. When you look at these dates, a start date of 5/3 and a substantial completion date by June 3rd, 13 months, we have to have somebody that can do that
Yes.
with minimal breaks, other than weather and the things we built into the schedule.
Right.
It cannot be, we're not planning on a piecemeal demolition. This is a total and complete demolition and preparation. So I want to make sure everybody is clear on this.
Total and complete identified demolition, other than the ones we're saving.
Yeah, okay. I like a scorcher's policy. But, okay, good.
And the qualifications and the schedule were not created kind of out of thin air. We did speak with contractors to try and come up with what was appropriate for this size of project. It is probably, I can say it's the largest demolition project the state has had in recent history. I mean, this is a significant project. So it is really important that we do have qualifications and requirements and make sure we have somebody who can handle it. But we've tried to draw the line, not to be too restrictive, but to make sure that we're getting
Is that where you
qualified.
come up with the $8 million number? It was not necessarily a demolition cost, but
Correct, project costs.
Yeah, so let's go.
Project costs.
So Steve, that's a good segue. Let's kind of go into the financial piece now.
Yeah.
Talk about that a little bit.
So we have worked with Chris and some demolition contractors on some early estimates. And then in addition to that, after asbestos testing was completed, we were able to better quantify the abatement requirements. And then just some of the hauling and different things that we've talked about. Between all of those sources, we've come up with a $10.5 to $11.5 million project estimate.
yeah, I was not alluding to the fact that the project was going to cost us $8 million. That's a
Yes.
requirement
You were
that they
talking
have
about the
to.
requirement.
Yeah, that's a
Yes.
requirement that the contractor has to meet, that he has that capability
Right,
and
yeah,
that
so it's
experience.
5
Correct.
projects of $8 million or more in the last 15
Right.
years with references.
Yeah, I just want to.
So not just I completed an $8 million
Yeah.
project 5 times, I also have to provide references, so that's something I know for certainly we're gonna do our due diligence on and check those
Yeah,
references.
I just wanted to make
Yes.
sure for the record that people wasn't taking what I said out of context that this project was gonna cost $8
No,
million.
no, glad you brought that back
Okay.
up, because that,
Yep.
no, that, the $8 million, and I'll say it again so the public understands totally, that is a prerequisite where you have to complete, had to have completed 5 $8 million construction projects or more in the last 15 years with references before you can bid this project.
And so when you think of your universe of contractors, that whittles it down significantly.
And I love the fact that you.
It will, and it applies to the contractor serving as the general contractor. And we've already talked to contractors where there's potential, that a demolition contractor would be a subcontractor to a site clearing contractor. So because of the uniqueness of this project, a general contractor on this could be a demolition contractor. It could be a site clearing, site work contractor. I don't think we'll see much of the other options, but it's a little atypical. It might not be a standard general contractor, but that whoever's serving that role is responsible as the single prime contractor, and they are the ones that have to meet the qualifications.
Dana, I'm very pleased that you put in here that attendance at the pre-bid meeting is mandatory, because that really weeds a lot of things out.
Yeah.
I'm very appreciative of that.
Yeah, and we just think it's critical that if they're gonna bid the project, they see the facilities.
Something this magnitude, yep.
Yep.
So in terms of the financial, we'll call it the estimate.
Yeah.
11.5 million, or 10.5 million to 11.5 million, falls in line with what we've been saying as a board.
10 to 15, yep.
Tell me what that covers. Tell me when you're talking about scoping it out to that cost, does that include disposal of any hazardous materials that encompasses the totality of this project, at least in terms of a high level estimate?
Yes, so it covers everything included in the construction documents for this bid, which includes the demolition of all the structures and utilities that we just talked about, the site grading work necessary to put the site back in a position that it can be developed in the future. It includes the asbestos abatement, which is in the specifications as to what was found, quantities anticipated, things like that. Hauling of materials and the salvage rights side of things. And then the alternates, of course, are on top of that number.
Okay.
Did I miss anything in that description? Okay.
To rough grading, that's the finish. As far as the general contractor during the demolition process is rough grading. That's the finished product.
So they're basically it's in there to fill like the foundation holes, utility holes, fill them to surrounding grade, and then rough grade the area. They're not gonna move this, this pile or this hill over to this valley or anything like that.
Right.
But it is, slick up the site after the holes have all been filled, so.
So when we talk substantial completion, I'm gonna fast forward to June 3rd. You're gonna come in and sit down with the board and say, based on our expertise, our understanding of the bid documents, everything we've gone through, we believe the project has been substantially completed under the terms and conditions of the bidding process.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good.
And I would say, Dana, and I think for you as well, so Chris is of course playing a very active role in this. We don't really have any construction observation type services, built into this. It was an understanding anyway that the county was going to.
That's him.
Right, that's him. So just so we're clear though, there'll be a substantial completion statement, but a lot of that is going to be based on, we're not gonna have somebody out there making sure that they didn't fill the hole back in without taking the pipe out of the hole.
Right.
So.
Right.
And I know that, I just know this, that Steve McCombs will never visit the VA during this process. You'll never go out there, you won't see him at all.
Yeah.
Trust me.
He'll probably be running the excavator.
No, he won't be.
Just to add to what you said, Brad, the county has retained services from Impact 7G, which is the asbestos abatement testing agency, and Team Services, which is a special inspections agency. And so they will be monitoring and confirming that all of the hazardous materials are removed, and then soil compaction and things like that will be tested throughout also. So there is some additional
Yes, we did that
assurance.
intentionally the standpoint of protecting the tax dollar. We wanted to make sure that foundations were filled properly so you could turn around and build on them. And obviously, as if you've had any chance to look through the Impact 7G report of the amount of supposed, or the asbestos that supposedly was already abated, that report shows very different. It's important the public understands that. The going rumor is that all the abatement was done on this campus in the 90s.
Right.
Yeah.
This report shows otherwise.
Right.
There is a massive amount of asbestos on that campus.
Right.
So Impact 7G will monitor the removal and disposal of that to ensure that it's done properly to standards from a liability perspective for us.
Yeah.
And back with team services, they're going to monitor and inspect and make sure that those holes are filled according to engineering standards so that you could go put a basement in the next day.
Back to that, Chris.
Yes.
So everybody's on the same page. The standards of asbestos abatement. You talking about the new standard of 1%? Is that identified on how this abatement is going to take place, or?
I'm not sure I fully understand the question, but let me
I'm
maybe.
not sure I do either.
Okay. There are laws and requirements for abatement. The design team has, we don't have any interest. I mean, there's no it doesn't do us any good to tell you have asbestos and you have to abate it just for, our own sake. The DNR requires it. There's a process that you have to go through. The contractor cannot demolish something without making sure the asbestos is abated, and they have to go through the process of confirming and validating that the testing has occurred, that the abatement has occurred properly before they can take that debris anywhere.
We've done the testing.
So the testing
already
was completed, yes.
Now, the general contractor, he does not have to hire an abatement company, or is that part of it?
He does, and that
Okay.
is part of the bid documents.
Yeah.
Okay.
So-
There are some contractors
So
that
it's
can
up
do
to
that
them-
in-house.
It's up to them to figure out
Yes.
what the new rules are.
Yes.
They're going to be held accountable, and that's why we retain the services of Impact 7G
Yeah.
to ensure that the abatement is done properly.
I guess that was my question, Dave.
Yes.
Okay.
But ultimately, the abatement contractor, and hence the GC most importantly, are responsible for this being done to standard.
Yes.
And if that comes down to every 1% ounce of asbestos is removed on that campus, then that's what
So
happens.
be it.
So be
Okay,
it.
all right.
And actually,
I just
Impact
wanted to
7G
clarify that.
Impact 7G has clearly outlined
Yes.
what percentage is where of every material that is on that facility to the best of their ability to test. Now, I will add,
Which I'm hoping will significantly reduce the bid. I mean,
That's why
obvious-
we,
Yeah,
went to
that's
the
why we-
extent,
that's
and why
why
Chris
I
went
just
to the
wanna- I
extent.
wanna
Well,
point-
there's two,
point that out.
whoa, time out. We did this for two reasons. Yes, we wanted to ensure there was not scope creep. That's different than reducing the bid.
Yes.
yes,
We wanted to make sure we didn't get any more of these addendums later on when someone comes back and says, oops,
Right,
there's this.
right.
Okay, so we did it for that reason. And number two, we wanted the best people to make sure that we knew what was there.
Yeah.
We didn't want a general contractor coming in, maybe not hiring the best.
Right.
So we employed the best people to give us the best estimate, so we know what's there. And then we can hold that standard and get the right people in to make sure that's done through that GC.
Just so everybody that's listening understands the process we went through to get to the point we're at now. That's, I guess that's what I'm really
Yeah,
trying.
we are not just blindly turning this over to somebody. We did this intentionally for these two issues, soil compaction and asbestos, to ensure that they were taken care of appropriately. And if it cost a little more, that's okay. This wasn't necessarily, this was about saving money. Anything else on that?
No, I think it's important as we think about dollars and cents spent. We can't stop looking at this project the moment it's clear. This is a means to redevelopment. The reason this is being done to this level is to achieve that means. And it's really important. I've had some conversations, some excellent conversations with members of the public who've had questions about why we're going to this extreme. Why are we not just filling in basements? At the end of the day, our goal is to be able to sell this concept for not only Marion County, but for the city of Knoxville to a developer. That they want to come in and redevelop this property, which is in the best interest of the entire county, not just the local city. So it's really important that people understand the extent we're going through is all for the end game. We're not looking at this from being short-sighted. We're looking to play the long game here.
You'd be hard pressed to get a developer to come in if you didn't clean it up properly.
Exactly.
All right, good. I had another question. Oh, you hit on a point that I've talked to the media about a couple of times in terms of the scope of this. This is a very large, publicly directed project, maybe one of the largest currently running in Iowa. Would it be appropriate? We've talked about kind of like maintaining oversight over the project. Would it be appropriate for members of the board to go out on a bi-weekly basis, whatever that time frame is, with Chris as the project leader here for Marion County, talking to the general contractor about what's been done?
Yeah.
And when I've done business integration before, we've always done that. You have touch-based meetings.
Yep.
Where you say, where are you at in the process? What has been completed? Show me, you know.
I think they identified that already in the contract documents. They have to have a bi-weekly or.
Yes. So any construction project, we require a contractor to have bi-weekly construction OAC meetings, is what they're called, owner architect contractor meetings.
I guess I'm talking, and does that envision being on the site?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I wasn't sure in the language, if that envisioned that, show me around, take me around, show me what's going on, not just come in and give me a 30-minute report.
Yeah, it would be typical to be
Okay.
on site and doing that. We also require them to have a job site trailer on site to host those meetings. That's specifically said in the documents. So yes, and who attends from the owner's side, that is up to the group here. I assume it will be Chris, but if others want to come, that's certainly
Yeah, I kind of
something that.
envisioned that as I was looking at that section being, obviously Chris. I know I'm going to be out there a lot.
Yeah.
I would like to include Brian Hatch and Ellen Morris from the city council. Just, I want communication to be consistent.
Exactly.
I want the view and visibility to what's going on to be consistent and transparent. Steve said that before, and I think he's exactly right. And I think that would be a good way to make sure everybody's communicating correctly on what is happening.
I seen
out
that.
there.
I seen that in here, Mark, but I didn't have that flagged. Exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yep.
'Cause I did read it.
Good.
And there's a bi-weekly thing, and then there's different meetings. that they
Yes,
have.
there's
And
pre-construction meetings.
They're supposed to fly a drone over
Yes.
during the process of the demolition to keep an update, so you can actually visually see
Yep.
Yep.
what's going on.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that, and I know it's written in here in a bi-weekly fashion, but given the scope, given the amount of money, the taxpayer interest, we may say, today I'm free, I want to go out. I may call Chris and say, it's Friday, I don't have anything going on. I want to go out and see what's going on.
I'll have a tent out there anyway, so.
Yeah.
Stop by.
Maybe we'll make sure you're well stocked. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. No, I appreciate that very much. Good. Is there anything else from a bid process, high level, you want to cover?
I did have one more item. You talked about, you called it addendum during construction. The technical term is a change order, because at that point you have a contract in place and you have to amend the contract if you choose to. There's certainly enough going on this campus that it is possible that they dig a hole somewhere and find something we were not anticipating. We've as a design
Oil?
team.
Gold? I
Maybe.
got a way to fund this thing. Come on.
Maybe.
Come on. You found something out there. Tell me. I've been giving TVs away behind the VA, by the way, according to social media. So.
TVs.
Yeah. You know how many TVs were out there, Chris?
Wow.
It's what it used to be. It was a TV repair shop. Anyway, go ahead.
So
I digress.
I do think that there's certainly potential, just with the magnitude of the project, that something could come up that was not foreseen, could not have been foreseen, that would need to be discussed.
No way.
Yes, that would need to be discussed upon, finding and potentially be a change order. One additional thing we have done to try to mitigate that is we have what's called unit prices in the bid form and bid documents. And this is specifically pointed at the asbestos abatement. If for some reason, there's a portion of asbestos found that wasn't specifically identified in the report because of just the magnitude, or it's under, in the tunnels or somewhere where we haven't been able to explore to the fullest. We have established 16 unit price items that on bid day, the contractor has to give you a dollar amount per square foot or linear foot for, if that's found, this is what it's gonna cost. So that's the best way to ensure that we're getting a competitive number on those things and not, whatever the contractor wants to throw at it in the future once they've found it.
I like that.
So we're locking them in on those items. And we chose those items because they were quantifiable, we can put linear foot, square foot dollars on them. And probably the most likely of the, anticipated fines would be in this category, so.
Good. When, a little bit of a side discussion, when you deal with a project of this scope, and I assume this is probably one of the larger projects you've been exposed to.
Demolition, yes.
Okay.
It's very unique in that category, but we do construction projects of this size and larger frequently.
Okay, good. So when we're talking about payment, not just for the change orders, but the overall contract, and I haven't gone through this in detail. I certainly haven't tabbed it like Steve has yet. But I plan, I'll color code mine on the weekends. So make sure I do that. When we start thinking about paying the GC, do we issue a deposit at first? What would be the normal expectation from a payment standpoint on a project of this size?
It will be.
Is it 10% down? Is it, what is that?
It'll be very similar to what you've done on like the elevator project more recently. Just the magnitude doesn't really change the process.
Okay.
There's still AIA standard payment forms, pay application forms, and the contractor will submit in advance a breakdown of the costs of the process with their schedule and sort of the dollar amounts associated with the different parts and pieces. Because this is such a heavy demolition focus, we'll have them break it down in like a by building sort of dollar amount, just so that we can have, they've demoed building 1 to this extent, and that gives us a guide for, this is how far along they are in the process, this is how much payment they should be expecting, and then we review that.
That's a good question.
Go ahead.
You're talking about, somewhere in here you had, and I think it was, maybe it's up to the general contractor's personal choice, but is it like a 5% withholding on each payment, or 5% on the total?
5% of the total is the retainage. That would be typical for a publicly bid project. And so they consistently throughout the project, even as they're doing work, they will retain 5% of each pay application until the end of the project. And then upon substantial completion and review of the work, we would recommend release of retainage.
Okay.
That's on each pay process.
It comes out of each payment.
Okay.
Yep,
Okay,
it
so
does. And
there's a 5% we hold back
yes.
on each one, or they hold it back.
They hold it back
they put
and
it in
identify
escrow,
it.
They put it in an escrow account or something like that.
Yeah, they don't bill for it.
Okay.
It's identified on the pay application that this is the amount we're not billing for because it's retainage.
Okay.
And it's
So
monthly?
we're holding the cash.
And it is monthly.
We're
Okay.
holding the cash
Okay.
until substantial completion.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Okay, that's good to know. Very good. Anything else that we need to be thinking about right now? We have a lot to review this weekend. I know I've got to go through this this weekend and make sure I've got it in my head. Anything else that would be pertinent this morning?
I don't think so.
Not that I have.
I think we've covered things really well.
Chris,
Anything?
anything from your perspective?
No, I think likewise, we've covered everything that we needed to cover. There's gonna be a lot of information here, and I'm sure you will be contacting me individually after you get through it all.
So, Keisha, Steve, any questions? So this is a good, get your questions answered now. Steve, I know you've got a lot of thoughts on this, so.
Well, I think I asked the questions that jumped out at me, but I'm sure I'll have more.
Sure. Keisha?
Nope, I have asked what I needed to. I appreciate it. It's exciting times. It really is.
And well, I'd like to
It's
thank
changed.
Chris for all the work he's put in on this and everybody. I mean, I really appreciate it. It's,
They make me look good.
huh?
They make me look good. They've all been.
It's a very big undertaking, and I hope everybody understands that we're doing our due diligence and we're trying to do it right.
Yeah.
I mean, I just hope everybody understands that.
Well, yeah, to get to a point where, I was just having this conversation with some folks this week. If you think about from the time that we got involved to now, so we're looking about a 2-year window, right? In 2 years, we have come up with a plan, we have acquired, we've a plan to acquire, and now a plan to demo, and we are almost to the point of starting that process. That is, I think, an amazing deal for Knoxville, Marion County, and for Marion County government, what we've been able to achieve. We've got some great folks, we have some great partners, and it's really gone. This is a great day for us.
It's unfortunate we got saddled with this problem.
That's what I was gonna say. Remind the public though that, the federal government did not.
And we've said it a lot, Keisha, and I get to the point now where, I think everybody might be past the point of saying, where's the federal government cash? Now, which seems a little bit ironic considering how much they print. It seems like they should be able to.
Yeah, but they're not willing to,
They should be able to turn on a press and then hand us a bucket of money and then we're done, right? We'll pay you in some phony money and we'll do that. Oh, Siri decided to turn on.
I was like,
But you're right, that we tried, and we're trying even to this day. So to your point, I'm working right now with our lobbyists that we hired on trying to get RIF funding for this project. I have met with state legislators. They agree that this project fits. And in March, or the end of March, beginning of April, when they do their appropriations, we might be in that. And that could be significant. So that's a good thing. Everybody knows we're on the list for coronavirus or whatever that funding is that they just signed. We'll have to figure out if that fits into this in some form or capacity. So there'll be some financial decisions we'll have to make going forward. But the overall funding, the federal government's been non-existent. They were not going to help us with this. They figured we had the help for the last X number of decades the VA's been here. That was their answer, by the way.
Yep.
You've already benefited from the VA. We don't need to give you any more money. That was their answer. So we're taking it on ourselves. We're doing great. We've got some great folks, and our taxpayers are stepping up in a big way for material change to our future. We're going to chart our own destiny, and we need to. So. Very good. Thank you so much for the overview. Thank you for the overview, for your help and expertise. We appreciate it. I have a high degree of confidence in where we're at and where we're headed. Chris, thank you very much. And if there are no further questions, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion we adjourn. Oh, wait, yours.
Oh, do we have to approve this?
Approve release.
We have to do
Please.
that? Okay, all right. Is there a
Rescind,
motion to approve and release the bid documents?
I rescind my adjournment and,
make motion.
It dies for lack of a second.
Okay. Make motion to accept and approve the bid documents for release. Is that what you do?
Second.
Ramey,
Aye.
Johnner,
Aye.
McCombs.
Aye.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, Keisha threw me off by asking me about money.
That's right. Make motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right.
Johnner,
Aye.
McCombs,
Aye.
Ramey.
Aye. Very good. We are adjourned. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.